It is the season of jazz festivals here in Paris and around Europe. And on today's show, I'm joined by two innovative artists who use their music to explore their roots. Saxophonist Camilla George is a Nigerian-born Londoner who fuses Afrofuturism, hip-hop, and jazz. She's performing this weekend at the Paris Jazz Festival. Trumpeter Herman Mehari was born in Missouri to parents who'd fled Eritrea. He's now living here in Paris, and he blends dreamy jazz with Eritrean rhythms and melodies. He just performed at Paris's La Défense Jazz Festival. It's so great to have both of you here in the studio together. You two have crossed paths before. You shared a stage at the Jazz en Nord Festival here in France this past spring. How familiar are you with each other's music?
Well, for me, that was the first time. And that's one of the beautiful things about jazz festivals. You get to discover incredible music, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, what were your impressions of Camilla's music?
I loved her, the band. You guys sound amazing. The music, it's the concept. It's totally up my alley. So it's good.
Cool. And Camilla, you for Herman, what was that discovery?
Well, we actually arrived during his sound check, and my band were like, gosh, they're so good. We were kind of scared to go on after it was just, my gosh, great. It was such a great band, great music, great players.
And you do have a few things in common. Camilla, you grew up in the UK. Herman, you grew up in the US, so very different countries, but you both had strong connections to your African heritage. How did that shape each of your journeys as musicians? Maybe, Camilla, you can start.
Yeah, I mean, I was, obviously born in Nigeria, came over to London and assimilated into London life. But I think what's great about somewhere like London is there are so many different people from all over the world. So I think that really did help me in terms of having the confidence to kind of write music that was about my roots, about the village in particular where I grew up in, called Ekiti in Nigeria. And I think being a Londoner definitely helped with that, actually.
And Herman, what about you? What was your experience similar to that growing up in the US?
Actually, a little bit different. I was a bit more focused in what we call maybe traditional jazz for the longest. And I grew up listening to Eritrean music with my family and when we had weddings and celebrations. But I never really incorporated it until a few years ago. It was then I was like, I really want to during the pandemic, actually, that I said, I want to really dig into this. This is a part of me that is important, and I never had, at that point, put the things together.
Okay, so a little newer for you, Camilla. You've been exploring your roots for a longer time, and you do both compose your own music. Camilla, you've said that your writing process tends to be very story-driven. I know your second album, The People Could Fly, was based on a book of African slave tales. What are some of the stories that inspired your latest album, Ibio Ibio?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, when I also wrote this album during the pandemic, like many other musicians, and I wanted to really cover all the bases of what made my tribe, the Ibibio people, special. So one of the stories was our creation story, our creation gods, Abasi and Atai. There's a shrine in the village, the Long Juju Shrine of Arachuku, which is very important. And there's a secret society which everybody in my family has been involved in, Ekpe. So these are the stories that I wanted to incorporate.
Okay, well, I want to take a listen to a clip of you performing live from that new album, Ibio Ibio, and I believe this is the creation song you were just talking about. And Camilla, on the album recording of this track, you actually feature the Birmingham rapper Sanity. I do want to take a quick listen to that too, just so we can hear the difference.
Beautiful myths of the population. We grew up with these Tails up over me, headed them then to shake them. Let my music be the fruit of...
And we definitely hear the hip-hop influence a little bit more there. Can you talk about maybe how you decide when to include vocals and when to just convey a story through music?
Yeah, I mean, it's very new, actually. I mean, I had a vocalist on one of my other albums, but for this one, because it's kind of bookended, you've got the intro and the outro, which are both similar variations on the same tune, and I really wanted to have vocals on that. I've been very lucky to have toured with Sanity a couple of times, and I thought, it's got to be her. So I was pleased that she said yes.
And Herman, you also sometimes include vocals. We're going to hear a song of yours that has vocals, but often you don't. How do you go about conveying stories through music?
It's an interesting question because for instance, on one of my albums, I literally took an interview I did with my uncle about my father who's passed away, and which tells his refugee story. As escaping war-torn Eritrea, and I just take his words that are there, and I play along with it with the trumpet when I interpret the pitches he hear and the rhythms he hear within his natural speech. So I've always been fascinated with how to use vocals, but in this recent album, Asmara, it's a Eritrean legend who joins me for a couple of numbers, Feitinga. And that was one way for me to really make the connection with Eritrean music, because Eritrean music is mostly vocals.
Okay, well, let's take a listen to part of a track from Asmara. This is Tenafakit. It's the one that you were talking about that features Eritrean singer Feitinga, who was also a hero of the war for independence from Ethiopia. And Herman, this feels like a very light and joyous song to me when I listen to it, but it's actually about exile, isn't it?
Yes. First of all, a lot of Eritrean music has this very happy character to it, a little joyous character. And a lot of the music was written originally, a lot of it's protest music. It was during wartime. But yes, so Feitinga speaks about, she's been exiled from Eritrea because of what's happening now currently with the regime there. And there's a hopeful aspect to it, but it's a longing. She's talking about how she's missing a lot of it, and she's hoping that, also one day she can go back.
And Camilla, your music also deals with difficult topics. Is part of the idea of putting those subjects into music sort of to be healing a little bit, empowering, to sort of find a positive, hopeful side to it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, definitely, when I did my second album, The People Could Fly, and there were slave tales, somebody said to me, why is this music so joyful? And I was like, well, the thing is, it's really about the hope that we can all live together in peace. And, there is joy in that.
And both of you also draw inspiration from the current cities that you live in. Herman, you're part of a new Parisian quartet that's called Now Beauty, or No Beauty, because the W is in parentheses. Can you explain the name, first of all, and also just the overall vibe of that group?
Yeah. So Now Beauty, our concept is that we play with this idea of beauty, whether this idea of beauty existing or not existing. And so that's why we're just kind of playing with the word there. And in the group is three great musicians: Enzo Carnel, Stéphane Atsouar, and Damien Vraillon, that I met on the Paris jazz scene when I first moved here, and we've got to know each other pretty well. We've played a lot, and only recently we said, okay, we're writing this music for each other. Let's do a collective album. We need to put out the music. And so we just recently released our album, which is self-titled as well, Now Beauty.
And Camille, you've been described as a rising star of the London jazz scene. How would you describe that jazz scene and maybe what makes it special?
Yeah, I mean, Thank you. But I think the London jazz scene has been special for, it's always been special in my eyes, but over the last few years, you've had this UK jazz scene with the likes of Shabaka, Nabaya Garcia, Ezra Collective, and they've all come from an organisation called Tomorrow's Warriors, which is a charity, and it is aimed at people mainly from ethnic minorities. You get to learn for free with famous jazz musicians. And so I think that has given us confidence. And also London is so diverse, so we're just pulling on the amazing aspects of the UK, I think.
All right, and we ask all of our guests to pick an album, film, or some other work of art that has inspired them recently. You both chose other jazz musicians. Camilla, can you maybe tell us about your pick in just a few words?
Yeah, well, Emmanuel Wilkins is an amazing alto player. I mean, he really is a genius. This album, The Seventh Hand, it was actually quite hard to choose a particular track, but I went for the first track because actually I still love it. I've got it on vinyl. I listen to it all the time.
All right, Herman, you're nodding along. You like...
Emmanuel's a friend, and he's amazing. What he's doing is really, really great for music and for the saxophone.
And you also chose an American jazz musician. Can you tell us about who you picked?
Michelle Ndegeocello. I love her for her. She's not afraid to be herself, to be weird, because she can be pinned into like a kind of R&B neo soul type thing as well, jazz, but it's beyond that. And the newest album is great. It's very eclectic. I love it.
All right, well, we're going to take a listen. We can play out with a clip of Michelle Ndegeocello. Camilla George, Herman Mehari, thank you again both so much for being here. It's been a pleasure. You both have tour dates coming up around Europe, so I encourage everyone check them out if you can. Thanks to all of you for watching, and there is more news coming up on France 24 right after this.
Opposite ends, let the further sea appear to nourish our land. Feed the people solidly.